What is up, everyone? Welcome to Optimus Fantasy Football here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching us. We are here. I'm here with Kevin for the second time today. You're still wearing the same Yankees hat
and hoodie.
and hoodie. We're here, though, for different reasons. Earlier today, we ranked wide receivers. Tonight, we're talking about the NFL schedule release for the 2025 season. Some of this won't be new. We've had a few games leaked. We know that we've got the Broncos Chiefs on Christmas at Arrowhead. We know who our opening night game is. It's going to be the Eagles and the Cowboys. But aside from that, we're learning a lot of new information. And joining me tonight to help me sort through all of this, not just Kevin Tompkins, but the one and only Keith Flemming here on my left, depending on which way you're looking at us, I suppose. That would be left. It's hard to say. It's all backwards. Kevin, how are we doing tonight, buddy?
We're doing good. We have got a lot on our plate. Obviously, I know things are rolling out officially at this current point in time, but we will be doing what we can to kind of parse through this and see what we got going on for our last real big talking point until players hit training camp.
Well, Keith, the reason we're here tonight is because this schedule tells us a lot about, first of all, what the NFL thinks about some of the teams as they're placing some of these later season primetime games with assumptions that these games are going to matter. These games are going to be for divisions, for playoff spots, but also because for fantasy-wise, we just want to know what some of these matchups are. We want to see the strength of schedule. We want to see, are the Chiefs playing a bunch of really good run defenses? Because that's really going to hurt Isaiah Pacheco's value if you dig into that kind of stuff. Keith, is there anything that you're looking for tonight as we see this schedule release? Is there a specific team that you're more curious about what their schedule is going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously want to see how my Atlanta Falcons will break my heart this season, and we'll get off to an early start with Tampa, Minnesota, at Carolina, Washington, Buffalo, at San Francisco, Miami, New England, before the schedule gets a lot easier. So that's not going to be great, but I am interested to see, just what are the primetime games. I do think they punt a little bit on Thursday games and, to be honest, the same thing with some of these Amazon Prime on Friday and Saturday games, but the Sunday night, Monday night, and the 4:00, primetime games are the ones I'm really interested because you're absolutely right. This is what the NFL is saying is either these teams are going to be really good and that's automatically going to make it an interesting game, or they think it's going to have the storylines that people are really invested in, whether good or bad. Sometimes we're invested in train wrecks. We've seen those before too. It's just interesting to see where their head is at. And then also kind of start figuring out, what teams are playing difficult pass defenses, run, defenses for what we do. So you can start looking at what players do I really like, what teams can't stop the pass. I'm looking, then at those fantasy quarterbacks, receivers.
Yep. Kevin, I love that comment you put up from our man, Lou Brunson. Happy NFL is always on day. I want to take this opportunity to give props to the NFL and to Roger Goodell and everything that this league has done. And I'm not going to give Roger Goodell props very often. Can't stand the man. He has a really slappable face, in my opinion. However, what he has done for the NFL is turn this into a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year news cycle. If you're a football fan, there is not a day during the year you wake up where there isn't at least something to read about in this league. What other league has a schedule release that's touted on their own network, and we're sitting here doing a live stream talking about these games?
We're all fucking slappies, and we can't get enough of it. So
it's true.
Case in point, 3 40-year-olds sitting on a Wednesday night while AEW Dynamite Beach Break is going on, sitting here talking about hypothetical, games that are going to be released on schedule, talking about Chiefs and Chargers in Brazil in week 1, talking about the friggin' Atlanta Falcons and Colts in Berlin in week 10. Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime. I'm just happy to not have the Packers play in Brazil this year.
It's funny. So I heard a story yesterday about that Berlin game where Indy's the home team. The Broncos requested that their Indy-Denver game be in Berlin. Indy declined. They didn't want to play Denver in Berlin because Denver brings such a massive presence on the road, especially overseas, that they knew that basically they were losing a home game to the Broncos if they played Denver in Berlin. So these are kind of the fun things that come out of this and some of the early leaks. And we're going to hear more about how the schedule was formed. And I'm sure that they're halfway through, Kevin, as you said, some weird montage video about the guy who picked the schedule. And
yeah, the NFL's one shining moment is some dude with a cauliflower hair named Hunter bringing it in on a freaking briefcase.
Let's hope it's not the same guy that picked the Mavs ball in the NBA lottery the other night, because it's amazing how often it's remarkable odds continue to happen, like 5% or less. It's like this is
we will have our Cooper flag moment tonight, I promise you.
We will. Well, we will. I want to put out this comment in the chat. Mr. Matt Reiser, speaking of AEW and wrestling.
Yes.
Matty Daddy, the homie. Haven't seen you around in a while, bud. It's good to see you tuning in. Thank you very much. And
we said Falcons. That automatically means Kyle Pitts. That means you know who enters the chat.
Yeah, that's true. And then we got the Smoke Show. The one and only, the original Kyle Pitts truther. Smoky Hill Nelson over there. What a dude.
Tell him I've got about $1,000 worth of Kyle Pitts rookie cards that I'm willing to unload for the right price.
Don't tell him where you live. He might cross the border and find him, man. You never know. He loves his Kyle Pitts.
Well,
all right, guys. Well, let's get to...
And never mind. I was going to say I'll probably end up in Louisiana. Anyway.
Hey, why not? New Orleans, baby.
Yeah.
Go get yourself a hurricane, some beignets, a po' boy.
As a Falcons fan, I do not approve that message.
Look, I love you, Keith, but New Orleans is one of my favorite cities on earth. It's beautiful.
I know. Hey, everybody can love what they want to love. Fuck New Orleans. As a Falcons fan, I hate them. I really do.
That's fair. Right. You can hate them. So, guys, I want to talk about a few of these games that we've seen already. We've got Vikings-Steelers week 10 on Monday Night Football. Or week 4, I'm sorry, on Monday Night Football. Vikings in Pittsburgh. Primetime game. No primetime Kirk Cousins from Minnesota. Is this a signal that the league believes that the Steelers are going to be better than we think they're going to be? And is this also a signal that they think J.J. McCarthy is going to be locked in from day one? If we're looking at a week 4 Vikings Steelers on Monday Night Football, is this a good sign for the assets on either one of those teams? Kevin, let's start with you.
Well, isn't that the Dublin game?
Is that Dublin?
That's the Dublin game. Is Steelers?
That is 7:30 a.m. I saw PM and assumed. Yes, that's the Dublin game.
Yeah, that's
we thought Aaron Rodgers would be the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. So
yeah, then we wasted a good surprise on you. Congratulations. Here's Mason Rudolph.
Amazing. Well done.
Dan Rooney, the owner, the past owner of the Steelers, was, I believe, the ambassador to Ireland.
He was.
So the Steelers have a very vocal contingent in Ireland. I think that's why they got that game. That should be fun for sure. So
it'll be a fun game. The overseas games are always fun.
I'm sure Pat McAfee will go over there and get wasted the day before on his show like he did for the Tech game.
Guys, week 4, Optimus Fantasy live from Dublin.
Dear God.
Dear God, no. That would be horrible news.
My dad's in.
As I mentioned... Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say, so the first thing I noticed about this schedule is that Brian Dable might not have a job past week 7 because if you look at the Giants' schedule,
the entire thing is outrageous.
The beginning, at least the beginning, I see one possible win on that schedule in the first part. Washington, Dallas, Kansas City, Chargers, Saints, probably the win. Philly, Denver, Philly again, San Francisco, Chicago. By the time that Denver game, or at least the second Philly game, that whole staff is probably out.
They better win the New Orleans game, because once you get past the first game with Philly, at Denver, at Philly, San Francisco, Chicago, Green Bay, at Detroit, at New England, by Washington, Minnesota.
Good luck.
Sorry, Joe Matz.
That's brutal. That is absolutely brutal.
The march to Arch begins.
That's true. That's a silver lining.
They'll trade Jackson Dart to the they'll trade him to the tight or somebody. They'll trade him to the Colts. There you go. And go draft Arch Manning.
Oh God. This goes in line with how I felt about the Giants anyway. I had a hard time believing that Russell Wilson or anybody starting, or Dable for that matter, was really going to last past week 6 or 7. I'm glad to see that the schedule's supporting it. Guys, we're getting more out here. We've got a lot of week 1. I want to go over some of these week 1 matchups. Obviously, we've got Cowboys-Eagles in Philly to start off the season on Thursday night.
So
then
weak.
the NFL they're following it up Friday night on September 5th with Chiefs-Chargers at 6 p.m. in
Brazil.
Los Angeles, or in Brazil. Sorry, in Brazil. Chargers are the home team here. Then we've got Dolphins-Colts on Sunday. We've got Steelers-Jets on Sunday. We've got Panthers-Jaguars, Cardinals-Saints, Giants-Commanders. That's the game I want to talk about, Giants-Commanders. We have a lot of high hopes for the Commanders coming into this season. They got to the NFC Championship game. How do they fare in week 1? Is this a game where this is where we start to see how bad this Giants team is? Or is this like a week 1 thing where maybe the Giants can actually hold on here and play up to the Commanders level? Keith, do you think there's any chance of that in week 1?
I mean, there's a chance because I think New York has one of the most dangerous pass rushes in the NFL. And we've seen over and over again, if you just have a really good day with a great pass rush, you can disrupt things. Problem is, I believe in Jaden Daniels. I like what Washington's done this all season. And I just think Daniels is not going to have that CJ Stroud slump because I think they've improved the line. I think they've improved the weapons around him. And it was his decision making, the way he protected the ball. And he, unlike Stroud, they use him a lot in the run game, which I think is part of the reason he's such a good passer. His defenses are always on their toes, worried what's this dude about to do. So, I mean, I would definitely be thinking that's probably one of the bigger spreads week 1 for sure, where Washington's laying a pretty big line.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. Kevin, looking at the Commanders' schedule, we have a little bit of information as to where they're kind of headed here. They've got the Giants, obviously, in week 1, and they've got the Chargers in Los Angeles on October 5th, Dolphins in Miami November 16th, then they've got the Giants in New York on December 14th. Just from what we're seeing, these few games, does this feel like a schedule that's going to be manageable for the Commanders? Do you think this is a schedule where they can be a 12-5 or a 13-4 team? Or are you worried about maybe Jaden Daniels maybe pulling like a CJ Stroud in year 2, where he just kind of disappoints versus where we thought he was headed in year 1 or year 2?
I mean, we know the AFC West is going to beat themselves up here. So, I mean, that's likely part, with the Chiefs, the Raiders, you got to figure are going to be one of the better teams. You look at the teams as far as strength of schedule, and the Chargers are what? I'm trying to pull this here. They're about middle of the pack as far as their strength of schedule. First is the teams they play, looking at, because they have to play in Spain as well. They're not only are they playing in Brazil, they're going to be playing, I believe it's Madrid, Spain, and let me find it.
That's the Dolphins game. That's 7:30 a.m. on the 16th. So yeah, that's going to be the Madrid game.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's going to be interesting, but they get to play the Giants twice. I mean, I know the NFC East is always they tend to beat each other up. Both of their Philly matchups are in week 16 and 18. So at least that's going to be, a bit of a reprieve there. But other than that, I mean, it looks like they play the AFC West, or no, the West and the AFC. I can't, whatever. I'm trying to read this grid. I'm sorry.
They could basically have 11 games that are either, I think it's 7 that are prime time or overseas, and then 4 at 4:00, where I would have a feeling on most weeks with just the player Daniels is, and the teams are playing that week, like at Dallas, at the Chargers, Detroit, they're going to also, be the game of the week on either CBS or Fox most of those weeks as well. So there's the first team that the NFL is all in on. I don't know if they can get through that schedule though. That's pretty brutal.
Well, Kevin, let's bring up your sheet here that we've got. I'm going to add this up here. This is just an aggregate of what we've seen and what a lot of assumptions are behind which games, which teams are going to play who. Let's start with Buffalo here. Baltimore, the Jets, Miami, New Orleans, New England, Atlanta is what it looks like it may be to start the season.
It's pretty soft if you're honestly, all things considered.
Yes. I agree.
Sorry,
Keith, what do you
Keith.
think of that schedule?
Do what?
What do you think of this? So we've got Buffalo starting with Baltimore, the Jets, Miami, New Orleans, New England, Atlanta before a bye week. How does that feel for you?
I mean, I don't love any of our first 5-6 games. Buffalo, though, I mean, the Baltimore game would always concern me. I think they were arguably the best team in football last year that just, didn't play a very good game. They did what the Ravens do. They beat themselves. No disrespect to Buffalo, obviously, but from there, I think
it's
Buffalo,
at home at least.
Yeah, and I mean, Buffalo, they still own the AFC East, and it's got to the point now where, obviously the Pats have May, and so much changes year to year, but we've pretty much seen if you have a, healthy Josh Allen, he's going to win 10, 11 games, and that's usually good enough to win that division. Yep. So and they dominate the division, typically go like 5-1, 6-0. So I think their schedule is actually pretty easy for a team that, had one of the better records in the NFL last year.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, Kevin, if you look at it past the bye, you've got Carolina, Kansas City, Miami, Tampa Bay, Houston could be a tough game. I mean, we assume Kansas City's going to be a tough game, but then Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, New England, Cleveland, then they've got a tough one at Philly, and they round out the season with the Jets. From a fantasy perspective, we talked about this wide receiver room earlier. There's nothing super exciting. Khalil Shakir was both of our highest ranked wide receiver for Buffalo, but for their running game and for Josh Allen, with this schedule, do you have any concerns for any of these guys moving forward? James Cook, does this have any bearing on their fantasy value for you moving forward?
I mean, it looks pretty, I don't want to even say it's not like backloaded, but like the front six they should be, I would say 5-1 into that. Like I can't see, maybe they trip up against Baltimore, maybe against the Jets, but other than that, they should be at least at worst 4-2 coming into their bye. And then, the rest of their schedule is pretty soft as far as they have a top 5 strength of schedule as far as like one of the easiest, because they do play the NFC South. They do play also the NFC North or the AFC North, I should say.
Yes.
So yeah, that definitely helps. And they don't have to do a lot of they don't have to travel overseas. It looks like all of their primetime games are within 4 of the first 6 weeks. And then they have one against Houston. That's actually kind of surprising that, after the bye, they have one game on Thursday Night Football. And then it's really just 1 or 4 o'clock on Sunday on the East Coast.
You'd think they'd be featured a little bit more heavily on prime time, but maybe they're thinking
Bill's
market
fatigue.
Saturation. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The market's been so saturated.
And they get flexed into. I mean, yeah.
Allen's not the new toy anymore. There's several other quarterbacks that have.
I think, Kevin, I like what you said. I think they're going to get flexed into some primetime stuff towards the end of the season. Now, let's talk about Baltimore, since we kind of started to talk about them a little bit. This is a run-heavy team. They start out at Buffalo, then they've got Cleveland at home, Detroit at home, at Kansas City, Houston, and the Rams at home before they have a bye week. Looking at this schedule, Kevin, is there anything that you're looking at in those first handful of games that concern you with how Baltimore runs their offense? Is there going to be any sort of dip in run volume, do you think? Are they going to shift heavy in the pass because of the defenses they're facing?
I mean, they're probably going to be in games at least in the 3 of the first 4 with, Buffalo, Detroit, KC. You got to figure they're not going to be blowing any of those teams out. They're going to be in like neutral game script at worst. I mean, they're probably obviously they can certainly lose those games, but they're not going to get blown out. They're not going to blow out any of those teams. So, Cleveland, probably more than likely that's going to be very good for Derrick Henry. And I think it's going to be good for Derrick Henry no matter, who they play. I mean, Houston's, they get that game at home, and then the Rams as well.
Well, especially Henry playing Houston. Doesn't he have like 200 yards every time he plays them?
Yeah, Derrick Henry has like partial ownership in the Houston Texans dating back to his days in Tennessee.
He's got part of the title on the stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, Keith, let's look at the second half of this. Chicago, Miami, Minnesota, Cleveland, New York, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati again. Then New England, Green Bay, and Pittsburgh to round out the season. I'm looking at this schedule, and I feel like this is a Derrick Henry 2,000-yard season. They're not facing any defenses that are especially difficult against the run. I don't feel like it's anyone who's really going to be able to shut down Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry. Looking at this and knowing that, would you bump Derrick Henry up a little bit in your running back rankings, Lamar Jackson maybe a little bit in your rankings, knowing that they have a little bit softer schedule against run defenses?
I mean, I do like their schedule, at least in terms of rushing once they get past that Detroit, Kansas City, Houston, Rams gauntlet, because there's not too many other good run defenses, at least from last year. And I know, again, teams can get better in the offseason, but I'm really in on Lamar. I saw it with Todd Monken at UGA with quarterbacks like Stetson Bennett. Every year he was there, he added new wrinkles, and the quarterbacks, another year being there, would get even better. And Lamar Jackson's one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play football. And just if you look at some of his passing statistics last year, I just think this Baltimore offense is going to be really good again, and they're going to, change it up with guys likely we saw Andrews, who looked like he was left for dead early in the season, really come on strong. Remember, Zay Flowers got hurt right before the playoffs, which that was a huge blow because, I mean, when you basically have the decision of you're going to load the box and try to stop Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, or if you do that, you get Zay Flowers one-on-one, and he pretty much was cooking people all year before the injury. So I love the Ravens offense. I do see this being another year, though, where they might be 3-3 going into the bye, 4-2, and people are talking about what's wrong with them, and then they go on a run the second half as the schedule gets easier.
Yeah.
Keith, I like what you said here, because I can see them losing 2 of these 3: Buffalo, Detroit, or Kansas City. Those are 3 tough games. I think that they can beat Cleveland, they can beat Houston, they can beat the Rams, though that's a tough one too. That could be their 3rd loss. Now, Kevin, you're a Packers fan. Let's talk about these Packers, because there are a lot of question marks in this offense. Outside of Josh Jacobs, we don't know what the receiving core is going to look like. We don't know if Tucker Kraft is going to be a thing again. They've got a tough first 4 games. Detroit, Washington, Cleveland, but then Dallas before the bye. Dallas could be a tough out. How do you feel about those first 4 games for your Packers?
I mean, they get the 2 toughest games at home at the very least. So, I like that, from getting Detroit and then Washington, I believe, is Thursday Night Football. So that's a pretty quick turnaround there. And then at Cleveland, at Dallas, and then, a quick bye. I mean, God, I wish they were all more. Don't get me on that soapbox about bye weeks, because the fact that you have 4 teams in week 14 again. You tell me you couldn't put those in the middle week. So fantasy is one of your biggest drivers of people watching Red Zone and people watching.
It feels like an FU to us. It really does.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we know who we can blame for the NFL community saying FU to the fantasy analysts. Had nothing to do with anything that happened at the combine.
Yeah. But the first 4, seeing the fact that they had those games at home seems perfectly fine. And then, their schedule actually shakes out pretty well. They're pretty backloaded though, because they do have to go at Denver, and then they get Baltimore in week 17, which, that's a pretty tough week 17 matchup. That's going to be on a 1:00 game. That could get flexed. Certainly, but yeah, absolutely. But the middle of the schedule is where they're gonna have to load up a bit, because Carolina, at the Giants, at Pittsburgh is tough, at Philly is tough, or versus Philly at home at the very least is tough. So yeah, I mean, I wish the bye were more closer to the middle of the schedule, but at least it is what it is. So you play the people that are on your schedule, and it is what it is.
I mean, I just think your division is so tough. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Minnesota, obviously, but I believe in Kevin O'Connell at this point. And, if JJ McCarthy's healthy, I think he's going to be really he's been good with pretty much every QB he's had, including Nick Mullins. The Bears have got to be, I would think, a little better with just all the talent they've brought in. And then obviously Detroit and Green Bay are really good teams. It's just, that's a brutal division right now, I would much rather be in a division like mine where really all the teams, well, Tampa Bay is good, but the other ones are all just fighting for scraps instead of this division where it's just going to be a slug out twice a year, but you get to do it 3 times.
Yeah. The NFC North's definitely, they're living up to their reputation as kind of like the pound and ground, like dirty division. These teams, Chicago specifically, I want to talk about. Let's talk about their schedule here real quick. They've also got the week 4 bye, Kevin, which is very irritating just in general, especially as a fantasy manager. Like, can I please not have to worry about that until at least week 5? I have enough to worry about the first 4 weeks of the season. But Chicago draws a pretty tough schedule here, Keith. Minnesota, Detroit, Dallas, and then they're at Las Vegas in week 4 before they get the bye. Looking at this with the Chicago offense, that there's a lot of new parts and pieces. They've got to figure out a way to work together early on because these are tough games. How do you see this shaking out in these first 4? Do you think that Chicago can even come away with 2 wins here? Or are we looking at a 1-3 team heading into the bye with lost confidence?
I mean, this is, I promise you, not a non-answer, but it would not surprise me if they're 3-1. It would not surprise me if they're 1-3, because I think if Ben Johnson lives up to the hype, I think this offense could be really good immediately. Just you look at what he did in Detroit and with Jared Goff. I think Caleb Williams is a more, physically talented, obviously, quarterback than Jared Goff. I like their weapons. I think it's almost an addition by subtraction with Keenan Allen, because they've got to make sure that Rome Odunze is really a priority in that offense. DJ Moore's really good, but the Detroit game's really tough. We'll see how good Minnesota and Dallas are. I do like Vegas, but I also wonder, how much better will they be on the defensive side of the ball? They definitely got better on offense, but it's not like they were stopping a bunch of people either last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a good question with Vegas's defense. And Kevin, I'll go to you for this one because they're in a tough division and their offense did get a lot better. And I wanted to talk about the AFC West because we're going on year 3 now where people are looking at this division saying this should be the best division in football. These teams are building, they're putting together key parts. You look at the Chargers getting Jim Harbaugh and what they've done with Herbert in the run game, kind of up in their game at tight end. Their defense has gotten considerably better. Kansas City has been to the last 3 Super Bowls and won 2 of them. Sean Payton's Broncos are on the up and up. But then you've got Vegas, where they got Pete Carroll. They brought in Bowers. They got Brock Bowers. They brought in Geno Smith.
You always have a chance when you have Brock Bowers.
Yeah, right.
You always have a chance when you have Brock Bowers. But let's look at this schedule. They start out at New England. I think they win that game. But then they've got the Chargers at home, then Washington, Chicago, Indy, Tennessee, and then they have to go to Arrowhead, which is historically one of the toughest places to play in the league, and it has been, even when the Chiefs aren't good, before the bye. Kevin, can this Vegas team come out of here with any sort of confidence thinking that they have a shot? Or are we going to be looking at a situation after this bye week where the season is lost, they're just trying to figure out their identity, and Pete Carroll is trying to figure out what he needs to do heading into 2026, which sucks for fantasy managers because then you're talking about bye-bye to Jacoby Myers because he's going to go out the window. They're probably not going to use him a ton. You can maybe rely on Brock Bowers and Ashton Jaunty at that point. Do you think that's what we're going to be staring down with this Vegas team?
I mean, look, you start with New England and you still got Indy and Tennessee. Like, you got a puncher's chance. Like, you're, what's that, 7 games before the bye? Even if you're like 3-4, you're still in like a decent spot because you've got, games against the Browns, you've got the Giants, you've got the Jaguars. Like, you can make up for it. Like, these teams are going to beat each other up. But at the very least, I know the Philly game sucks for like the fantasy playoffs. But like Houston and the Giants is not a bad draw for, especially like Brock Bowers, especially for Genty. Like, I kind of love that for if I have any of those pieces. Philly, you're going to start those guys, obviously, but it's not like a great matchup. Maybe you get Brock Bowers in some garbage time if they just get down, because that's in Philly. If they get down, that's tough sledding. But, I'm totally fine with like running anybody out there. If they look competent against Houston and against the Giants is like the back half of the fantasy playoffs. Like, right. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good end of season schedule. Thank God we don't do championships in week 18 because they've got KC I mean, granted, it's in Vegas.
That's
but,
great for like that kind of thing is great. Like to the teams that play like the tougher divisional matchup, like that play one of them in week 18. Like that is something to look at when you look at like Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I mean, you're not starting many like Steelers outside of maybe if like Caleb Johnson, or like DK Metcalf, God rest your soul. If you still
wide
have
receiver
him at that
47.
point. My wide receiver 47.
Wide
That's
receiver
right.
47.
Yep. But yeah, like the Jets, if you have Garrett Wilson, your matchup in Buffalo is in week 18. If you're the Commanders, your matchup in Philly is in week 18. You can look at that because that just removes one bad matchup or at least a perceived bad matchup out of the equation.
No, I completely agree. All right, I want to move on to a team that we chatted about a little bit, but there's just so muddy. The Pittsburgh Steelers. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Aaron Rodgers, Mason Rudolph,
Kevin Tompkins,
Keith Flemming. My arm feels good, man. I'm here. I've got a number 90 jersey. Just change the name on it.
What's the kid from Ohio State?
I'm ready to go.
Will Howard.
Will Howard, yeah.
Will Howard. It could be Will Howard.
Ron Howard.
I did little Opie at quarterback. Yeah. Who doesn't love that, right? The season starts out fairly decent for Pittsburgh. They've got the Jets in New York. Then they've got Seattle at home, and then they have to go to New England to play New England, and then they get Minnesota at home. That's going to be a tough one. What my question is, Kevin, I'll start with you. Looking at this early schedule, then after the bye, they've got Cleveland, Cincinnati, Green Bay, Indy, and the Chargers before they have to play Cincinnati, Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Miami, and then Detroit, Cleveland, and Baltimore to round out the season. This is not sounding good. How does this work out for Pittsburgh? Are we looking at a team where this is the first time maybe they're not 500 under Tomlin, and there are just more question marks by midway through the season where maybe DK Metcalf is the guy who's getting benched because he's not producing? We have questions about Jaylen Warren, what he's doing because the offense just isn't functioning. How do you see this playing out for Pittsburgh?
So since the beginning of time, the Mike Tomlin Steelers start, and then from the beginning of time, and then really hammering home the ethos of the Pittsburgh Steelers is to go 9-8 or 8-8 or 9-7 since they moved to the 17 game schedule. We're staring down the barrel of 9-8 right now. I don't think there's any question about it. It doesn't even matter who they play. They are going to be playing on Saturday at 4:30 Eastern against whatever worst, the second worst division winner, whoever it is. That is written in the stars. It is written in stone. It doesn't even matter it could be, little Opie at quarterback. It doesn't matter. But look, they play Seattle. They play New England. They're probably a 2-2 team, possibly 3-1 entering bye. And getting two matchups with Cleveland helps. Miami's a volatile team that could be up and down. Buffalo, their Buffalo game is at home, which is good for them. So you got to be figured Renegade will be playing in the fourth quarter in that one. Green Bay, Indy, that's a 9-8 ass team.
Baltimore no matter might not be playing for anything the last week of the season.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson's sewing up his MVP.
Let's hope. He should have got it last year, but that's neither here nor there. There's nothing I can do about it. Let's move on to the Minnesota schedule. We've got the rookie J.J. McCarthy, who's going to be rolling out for Kevin O'Connell. The assumption is he's going to be good. We assumed he was going to be good last season. He got hurt. Sam Darnold took the reins. They let Darnold go. They had no interest in Aaron Rodgers. Here is a schedule that J.J. McCarthy is faced with to start his NFL career. At Chicago, then Atlanta at home. They've got Cincinnati at home, at Pittsburgh, at Cleveland. Then they hit the bye week in week 6. Keith, does this feel like a schedule to start the season for Minnesota that is going to allow J.J. McCarthy to kind of ease into things? Now, yes, he's in his second year, but he hasn't taken a meaningful NFL snap in his entire career. Do you think this schedule will help him ease in, or is this going to be something where he's going to get roughed up, shocked, and we're going to have to see what kind of character he has coming out of the bye week, whether he can regroup and get back together and just keep working?
I would be leery of starting him from the beginning of the season. I think you have the built-in excuse of, he's coming off the injury, and because at Chicago, that's just not a fun place to play, period. Outdoors, not a great field. Again, this guy's coming off a horrific leg injury. Atlanta, we'll see, but for the first time in over a decade, I'm hopeful we're actually going to be able to get after the quarterback this year. And I think Raheem Morris has a pretty good record against rookie QBs. And then obviously, like Pittsburgh and Cleveland, say what you want about their teams overall, but they can get after the quarterback, like they both can. And Cleveland got even better at that, obviously in the draft. So the thing is, though, I trust Kevin O'Connell. Like, I think he's one of the better coaches in the NFL right now. If you look what Minnesota's been winning with, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. Like, they have some really good players, but it's not like the team's loaded with guys that you're immediately going, this is one of the best players at this position in the league. And I do think JJ McCarthy has a chance to be, the best quarterback that he's basically worked with so far. And that's no disrespect to Kirk Cousins. It's just he has a much stronger arm than I think any of the QBs that he's worked with so far. And I think that it's been good for him, like not to tear his leg, but to get a year to watch. Even if he does start right away, it's good when you have a quarterback whisperer and he's already had his hands on the quarterback, for a full year.
Kevin, let's look at the second half of this Minnesota schedule. Philly, the Chargers, Detroit, Baltimore, Chicago, Green Bay, Seattle, Washington, Dallas, the Giants, then Detroit and Green Bay to round out the season. For a dude in his second year, does he have enough time in those first 5 games, get into the bye, to really get things together where you can be confident as JJ McCarthy being someone that you would want to roster in a 2 QB league? Obviously, he's out the window in 1 QB. If you're playing in a standard 1 QB non-superflex, you're not going to draft him. But in 2 QB leagues, looking at this schedule, do you feel like he's viable? At some point, he might be startable in 2 QB?
Well, you're rostering him no matter what, just based on the hope that Kevin O'Connell can work his Jesus magic on the dude. And then, look, as Keith said, I trust Kevin O'Connell with my life. I trust him implicitly. So, we've seen dudes run, I want to run through a brick wall for the damn guy. But do I want to start there's so many variables that we we don't know all the shit about fuck yet. So, but the fact that you've got Philly, Chargers, Lions, Ravens, Bears, Packers,
stretch.
Like that's a stretch there where you're that's nut cutting time there where we're gonna find out. Like if you can tread water in that, you'll probably be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm really hyped for JJ McCarthy. A little bit nervous. I don't like Michigan as an Ohio State guy. Sorry, everybody. But still, the talent's there. And I think O'Connell's the guy who's going to get the best out of him. Now, before we get out of here, I think we should roll through some of these fantasy playoff schedules. Kevin, thanks for the suggestion here, sir. But yes, we need to look at some of this. So let's talk about some teams with players that we really care about a lot that are going to be linchpins of teams who get into the fantasy playoffs. Let's start with Cincinnati. If we're looking at this from week 14 on, Cincinnati's schedule, they start with, we've got Baltimore, Miami, Arizona, Cleveland for the fantasy playoffs, depending on how deep you go. If you're Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, let's talk about Chase Brown, T. Higgins. Are these guys that you feel confident in these last few weeks of the season that you think that they can be fantasy relevant in the playoffs? Obviously, Jamar Chase, you're starting. Joe Burrow, you're starting, barring injury. Kevin, how do you feel about this schedule for the fantasy playoffs for Cincinnati?
I mean, it's one of the better ones, certainly. And don't slander my T. Higgins. I got his jersey up on the back. I've been a staunch.
I know.
I've been leading the charge. You can't ask me if he's fantasy relevant. We're drafting him in the 3rd damn round.
Well, no, not. Okay, let me put it a different way. Will he be
director? Roll the tape back, producer.
Let's roll the tape.
I'm throwing the red flag.
I thought it was a fair question, Nate, but
My only question. Damn it, Kevin. Here's my.
It's a good fantasy playoff. Like anytime you get to play Arizona and Miami, like that's a very good back-to-back there. Baltimore, you got to figure they're going to be competitive, and even if they're down, that's pass volume. As one of the teams that has been top 3 in pass rate over expected the last 3 seasons, like you're pretty much hanging your hat on the fact that Cincinnati's going to pass. They have all their guys back. It's a given. It's also written in the stars.
Right,
so yeah,
Keith,
that's a very good one.
So Keith, with this schedule, how confident would you be starting Chase Brown?
Not very confident. I mean, if you're a 0 RB guy like me, I'm now in the club, Kevin. FYI, I think he's going to be a value in drafts this year where you can wait and take him. So depending on how the rest of the darts that I throw in middle to late rounds at running backs, turn out, yeah, I could absolutely see myself playing him. But I don't want to go into a situation where I'm like, yes, I'm going to be playing Chase Brown in the playoffs. And most of these defenses are typically better against the run than they are, versus the pass, at least in the last few years. So I would much rather have the passing weapons for this final stretch and, Joe Burrow, obviously, than I would Chase Brown or, who else? Because, I mean, we haven't seen him hold up for an entire season. We saw it for 7 games last year, I think. And I mean, it was great. He was getting all the touches, all the carries, but I'm interested to see, can he handle that kind of workload for a full season? It always scares me if he creeps up in drafts to spend that kind of capital on a guy that I don't know if he can handle a true RB1 workload.
Kevin, how do you feel about that? Are you in agreement here with Chase Brown? Like maybe he's a guy you kind of shy away from later in the season because we just don't simply know if he's going to be able to handle that volume.
With Chase Brown, you have to draft him in like the end of the 3rd round, maybe into the 4th. If you've already, and I know there's obviously the sunk cost fallacy, you talk about that, but like if you're drafting him that high, you're hoping that he's going to be a guy you play regardless of matchup. And the fact that you still have, even if you play Baltimore, they didn't add any, but like they added Taj Brooks in the 6th round and they still have the corpse of Zach Moss. Like I'm not super worried about anybody behind him taking touches from Chase Brown. Joe Mixon, we've all been, writing the obituary for him as far as a guy that we're hoping Chase Brown takes something from him. We're hoping, ex running back takes stuff from him, Chris Evans or whatever the flavor of the week, Travion Williams. And that didn't happen. That's not how Zach Taylor operates. He did not draft anybody of worthy draft capital enough to have me worry anything about Chase Brown. So I'm perfectly fine drafting him, playing him. I'm drafting him for matchups like this. He could probably, just soak up volume, soak up some receptions there against Miami and Arizona in the playoff weeks that I need him the most.
I can't believe you take him in the 3rd round, though.
That's where he's going, man.
I get that,
Kevin
but I'm just saying, like, that's
would.
why. Okay, he's saying
he just said people may be taking him in the 3rd round. Kevin will not be taking him in the 3rd round. That's not 0 RB. We know this to be true. Another team I want to look at because it's loaded with fantasy assets we love. And Kevin, we talked about this receiver core a lot today. The San Francisco 49ers. Their last 4 games, they've got Tennessee at home, then they're at Indy, Chicago, and Seattle at home. I'm looking at these 4 games, and regardless of how I feel about their wide receiver core or how I feel about Christian McCaffrey or Isaac Guerrero likely being the starter by midseason because Christian McCaffrey's legs fall off, I like this schedule for the San Francisco assets. I even like it for Brock Purdy, and I'm not the biggest Brock Purdy fan. I think the guy's been a little bit overrated. Kevin, you and I are going to talk plenty about that tomorrow, and I can't wait. But I want to ask you, I'll start with you, Kevin. Looking at this 49ers last 4 games, their bye is week 14. I'm sorry, week 14. So they've got Tennessee, Indy, Chicago, Seattle. Only 1 road game, which is at Indy. I think they can win that game pretty easily. How do you feel about Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, George Kittle? With these last 4 games, if you're looking at the fantasy playoffs and you're projecting ahead, are these guys who you think are must starts based on this schedule when we get there?
I mean, we got to see how that all shakes out with like their actual skill position players. But in terms of the schedule, like I don't really see a pass rush in like any of those teams, and that's probably good for a guy like Purdy to be able to sit in the pocket and distribute. So that's good for whoever ends up being like those guys. But obviously we have to see that through. But that's very encouraging for the fact that you get that bye and then you get Tennessee, Indy, Chicago, Seattle
Yeah.
week 18. So hey, look, some sickos play in a week 18. So even if you play in a week 18, Seattle's not the worst matchup at all.
Nope. I play in 2 leagues that do it, and I won one because of a Nyam Hines 2 kick return touchdown games because we also can't kick returns.
Yeah, that was against New England, and that was the game after the Cincinnati game, right?
Oh, I know. Yes, it was. That was a big deal, and it won me a championship. So hey, let's go. Keith, looking at those 4 games, if Brandon Ayuk ends up being the man in this offense, like I think he's going to be, do you look at those last 4 games as a fantasy manager and maybe draft him a little bit higher, looking forward to the playoffs, knowing he's a guy who's going to get volume? But if you can get him as like a high-end wide receiver 3 or a back-end wide receiver 2, which is essentially where Kevin and I both have him ranked, is it worth it to maybe reach on him a little bit because those fantasy playoff matchups are so good?
I mean, I love Brandon Ayuk. I always have. I do kind of question, like, where is his ADP compared to Juwan Jennings?
I mean, I'll tell you right now, I have Brandon Ayuk as let me find it here. I do not have him as a high-end wide receiver 2. I have him as like wide receiver 49.
Yeah.
So don't you be putting words in my mouth.
I mean, well, something that we talked about earlier today was that if things go right with Ayuk and it shakes out, he's going to end up a lot higher than either one of us had him ranked. And if that ends up being the case, if he's the guy, is it even worth it to think like, well, if he is the guy, he's worth maybe reaching just a slightly bit above where his ADP is at to get him? I mean, Kevin, I'm going to guess you're going to say no.
Well, I mean, he's going to be a guy that we're going to get more information on, especially with his health. So, just like we were, a couple seasons ago when Chris Godwin was coming off his ACL, we were getting news that he was going to be ready week 1, and then pretty much ended up being, he played in week 1, left with a hamstring injury, missed week 2 and came back at week 3. But like he was ready. Not, and as Stefania Bell loves to say, not every injury, especially a ligament injury, is the same. So we have to get some good news about, Ayuk, and that's going to depress his ADP. But as we get some news, he's got the name value to be a guy that can easily shoot up, a round or so, or even 2 rounds based on just like one good, like positive report.
I also just think that the Niners, it's the first time in forever they could be trailing in a lot of games. This team is in the middle of a rebuild, and I target teams that I know are going to be in what I believe is pass heavy situations, especially when Ayuk, I need to know more about like how he looks in camp and everything, but Jennings and Purcell, like I'm all in on. Like I think that San Francisco is going to be not a very good team. This is a rebuilding year. And I mean, this is a team that's been up a lot the last 3-4 years, and they run a ton. And I don't know if they're going to be in the situation to do that this year because their defense is not going to be nearly as strong as it's been in years past.
Yeah, they turned over a lot of people in that defense too. And like even to like talking about the pass catchers, like I'm not even sure there's like a guy. It's probably going to be more of like that group of guys, and any one of them could lead the team in a given week. And so I don't know if it's gonna be like Brandon Ayuk with like 30 more targets over like Kittle or whoever the next guy is. Like I think it's going to be pretty tightly packed between Jennings and Pearsall and Kittle and Ayuk. And, we talked about it before. There's only one football and not everybody can score every week. We've seen that with, when CMC or Kittle has a big game, Debo maybe sat out. Debo and Ayuk had a big game. Kittle was 2 for 20, and I think that kind of exists here. But you're probably getting that on a worse offensive system now with CMC another year older, Brock Purdy, Trent, the last gasp potentially of Trent Williams, and a worse defense.
Yeah.
All right, the last team I want to talk about, guys, before we get out of here, the Detroit Lions. and their fantasy playoff schedule, because this is a team where guys were looking at drafting Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. We've talked about Isaac Tesla as well, Kevin. Might be someone who people take a late round flyer on if things get spicy and people get weird about it. Their playoff schedule starts here with week 15. They're at the Los Angeles Rams. Then they are Pittsburgh at home, at Minnesota, and at Chicago to round out the season. Keith, let's start with you here. Looking at that playoff schedule, is there anything about that makes you maybe shy away from some of the lower tier guys like not Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm sorry. That is incorrect. Jameson Williams, Isaac Tesla, does it make you less likely to take a flyer on these guys looking at that schedule, knowing that maybe they won't be productive for the fantasy playoffs, or do you feel different?
No, I mean, I feel different. I still think Jameson Williams is the most talented wide receiver on that roster. We saw last year a huge uptick in his usage. I mean, it was the minute we saw it, no offense, Kev, but in that playoff game, I believe it was versus Green Bay, where he just went ham and had both the rushing and receiving touchdown. That was really the first time we got a glimpse of what he could do in the NFL. And last year they were so good with him. And I know it's not sexy, but having watched Tate Ratledge at UGA the last couple of years, it is scary how good this Detroit offensive line has already been, arguably one of the best offensive lines in football the last few years. And they just added arguably the best guard to ever play at UGA. I think it was one of the best picks in the draft because it really strengthened one of their few kind of weak gaps. And that offensive line was already incredible. And I think that's only going to enhance the run game, the passing game, everything. And as long as Jared Goff doesn't turn back into a pumpkin, which we're getting further and further away to where I'm not believing that's going to happen again, at least not for a season. We see it in games here and there. I think this Detroit offense is going to be really good. And we've seen with these big play guys, like the rookie that, I mean, all he has to do is have a Jameson type season to be taking darts on him, where even if he has, 5-6 games with 3 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, that'd be perfect. So,
Kevin, is there anything about this playoff schedule for Detroit that would deter you from drafting any of these guys? I mean, obviously Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Amon-Ra are automatic.
I'm not worried. If you're drafting those guys, you're with them thick or thin. Like I'm not that's almost the first, like if I'm drafting guys in the first couple rounds, I am drafting them without a thought in my mind compared to the schedule. Like I'm not looking at that and going, well, I don't even use that as like a tiebreaker. Like sure. The defenders have to defend as well as the players have to produce on offense. So, granted, at home against Pittsburgh, what are they going to score? That's probably, if the Lions come out, that renders a lot of what Pittsburgh does, holding teams down, that renders that almost moot. And then, the Rams, I mean, look, Rams and Detroit in SoFi, that we already had a track meet once. We can probably do it again.
Best ball lineups now or DFS lineups now, Kev?
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Give me 8,600 Jahmyr Gibbs and 7,800 Jameson Williams. I'm down.
And Devontae Adams.
Devontae is the bring back.
Yeah.
We got just real quick before we get out of here, I want to highlight a couple of comments. Got Mr. Magic saying, Ayo, what is up, buddy? We've seen him around all week for all of our shows. He wants to know Malik or Puka. I do believe we unequivocally, unilaterally answered this question earlier. It's Puka over Malik right now in our draft rankings.
Yeah, but they're back to back. So we're, you're splitting hairs there, but I guess Puka's slightly over just because of the quarterback issues. But both are awesome.
Yep. I want to shout out my buddy John. I haven't seen him around in a while. Really stoked he tuned in. He gave us 5 stars, guys. So we're doing it right.
God bless him. I needed that today to pick me up. Thank you.
Me too. Well,
it looks like we had him at 4 stars, and then something we said about almost 20 minutes ago got him up to the 5.
It was, we were bragging about Brock Bowers. That was right when we talked about him. The minute he saw we were pro Brock Bowers, we got the extra.
You know what? That's going to get most people. But hopefully, guys, we can get you later in the week. Before we get out of here, tomorrow, Kevin and I, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to spend another 2 hours going through two positions this time.
Yes, sir.
We got quarterbacks and tight ends. Yeah, Keith, it is insane. We had a blast. And that 2 hours.
No,
is
I'm
gone
just
before I
saying.
knew it today.
I am impressed. It's just I listened to a good bit of the running back one. I have not checked out the wide receiver, but I will. But you guys are just, I'm serious, doing the Lord's work. So we appreciate you. But you're also insane.
We are insane. But then you can catch the three of us back Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have a great Q&A session. We're going to talk about all the stuff from the schedule release. We're going to talk about some of these rookies. We're going to talk about a ton of stuff. But we're going to be here, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And make sure to check Kevin and I out tomorrow. We're going to talk about Dak Prescott. We're going to talk about Brock Bowers. We're going to probably talk about some other players too.
Mostly maybe those two.
But mostly, I mean, if you're looking for much more outside of those guys, you might be disappointed. But
we should just call it the Bauer Hour if we're being honest.
It's our DFS show.
I'll start working on my my thumbnail for tomorrow. All right, guys, we're gonna get you out of here. Keith, Kevin, thank you guys so much. This has been a blast. Great way to spend a Wednesday night. It's stormy as hell out here, and I'm glad nobody could hear it. It would have really interrupted things. We're gonna get you out of here. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Thanks for spending your time with us. While you're here, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the Optimus Fantasy channel wherever you're watching us. We really appreciate it. For Kevin Tompkins and for Keith Flemming, I'm Nate Polvogt, guys. This is Optimus Fantasy Football, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.